everyone. Welcome to another interesting podcast session on Accurate. And today we have an amazing person with us. Before we introduce her, you all know my name. My name is Opanekbo, and we have Corey.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and we have an amazing person in our midst today. Deborah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Deborah Kolawole, the Gen Z journalist. Okay, so
Oh, I like that.
I'm an education journalist and a member of the editorial board at Punch newspapers. Well, apart from that, my life revolves around education basically, and just doing the actively involved in several education-based non-governmental organizations. Enjoy speaking to stakeholders in the education sector. So basically, that's my life: education, education, education. So
Wow, that's really really good. It's very not difficult, but it's been a long time that you will see a Gen Z or someone like a millennial that will probably say that, okay, I'm into education. It's mainly tech or the other stuff like that. But it's amazing to see that we still have brilliant minds that can still really focus and bring that youthfulness into this education and all the crazy stuff happening in Nigeria right now with the education system and the rest. We're going to get
right,
into all of that, right? Yeah. So thank you so much for finding that call and going with it. And I'm sure it's going to be an amazing time talking with you on this podcast today. Before we go into like the questions, can you just give us like what made you go into education? Because I really want to know.
so
When did you choose that path?
okay, so this was how it started. When I was like very young, like I
Mhm.
think but then my teachers would always be like, you guys, what do you guys want to be in future? What do you guys want to venture? Then my friends would always say, you know what, I want to become a doctor, I want to become a nurse, I want to become a pilot. And then when they,
Ah,
I would just say, I would say, I want to become a professor. And then people would be like, professor of what? I said, I don't want, you know. And then
that's different.
my mom
Wow.
would say that, okay, you want to be a professor. Professor of what? I would say,
What?
oh, but I feel like I just want to be talking to people about education. It was very funny then. But I think some of the
Wow.
things that actually like influenced my decision were basically okay because is a teacher, right? And then I have an uncle who's actually like a professor. He was a professor at the University of Ibadan then. So then we don't
Yeah.
we don't call him uncle. We just say Professor Ayeni, Professor Ayeni. And then like he
Maybe.
very sound person. And then as far back as the 2000s, the ASU strike was a thing, right? So most of the time when we
Mhm.
have conversations with him, it's always based on, oh, what's even wrong with this government, this education? You need to know what is happening in our university. When you come to University of Ibadan, and then there were a lot of conversations centered around that. So then growing up,
Yeah.
in fact, to be very honest, in secondary school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? So my teachers, okay, you should become a doctor, you should do this. And then I told my teacher that I think I want to like venture into the humanities. And then my teacher was like, are you okay? And then called my mom. And then I was like, okay, I don't know
Okay.
what I don't know. At some point, I'm like, okay, maybe I should just study any course and then just become a teacher or just do something. But then I wanted to just venture into that line, but I didn't know how. And I didn't really, I knew I just had that passion, I had that great, but I
Yeah.
knew how I was actually going to venture into it. So, yeah, I studied foreign languages, I graduated. For a while, I worked as a banker, and then I left because it was just not my thing, right? So, like, during that
Yeah.
period, I left during COVID lockdown, and then, I started I started writing, yeah, basically, even though I was just writing randomly. I was always like, I
Yeah.
think that COVID-19 period, I mean, schools were shut down and all of that. And
Yeah.
few public schools, in fact, public schools were not even involved in the
Oh,
digital learning.
yeah.
So, like, I would
Mm-hmm.
just a blog and then I would just question, wait, why are we like, what is happening? Schools across the world are actually moved on. I mean, we actually like our students are stranded back at home and all of that. And well, by providence divine, yeah, because I'm a literature student. By providence,
Okay.
I got into Punch newspapers, right? And when I got into
Mhm.
Punch newspapers, Punch has always been like my dream. That story for another day, obviously. So I
Yeah.
got it, and then I was assigned, I think, health. I was told that, okay, you know what, Deborah, we want you to like manage health and education for a while. So, at some point, I fell in love with health. But because health was like very interesting, I was, having conversations with medical doctor. But despite that, I still noticed that, okay, my work, even as a health reporter then, still focused on, like, let me say, educating people, right? Talk to them
It's
about
still
last.
water. Yeah.
So later along the line, my office now said, you know what, we don't want you to do health again. We want you to now focus primarily on education. Now, it was so funny that, when you've had dreams of actually venturing into a path, and then you now have to actually focus on that dream. But at that point, you are like, "Ah, it's like me, I've abandoned this dream. Oh, me, I'm not in love with health. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
I cried for like 2 days. And I was like, God, I love health. I don't know, like it's always fun when you talk to medical practitioners and then, all those
Mhm.
terms you are throwing, and then people will ask you, did you study medicine? You just be like, no, 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 no. I'm just a health journalist, okay? And all of
Yeah.
that. I I accepted it, obviously, because so, you know, passion for something that I've always fallen in love with, like growing up. I had
Yeah.
love for it because along the line I fell in love with something else. So that was how, yes, educating people through education journalism now came, and it has
Yeah.
been really, I think, like it's a brand of journalism that people don't really see as a big deal. I mean, most people want to investigative journalism. Most people want to venture into health, into politics, and all of that. But education for me is just not about. It's more than when you say something is like a source of income. It has now
Mhm.
become a thing for me. Like I said, it's something I've always said has become
Yeah.
a thing for me. I mean, I breathe, I live education, and I get fulfillment a lot. Like
Yeah.
random sending you messages. I think ago, one of at the central Lagos, like I think one of the admins of our social media pages actually got a message, and the person was like, "Thank you so much for what you guys do in education," and then the guy had to forward it to me, and
That's so sweet.
you do stories, and then there are stories of students who are stranded abroad, because of federal government failed to do one or two things or the other, and then they get
Yeah.
okay, we've gotten a response for the federal government. You have this joy in your heart. Okay, the student, you go to their school, obviously you see that, okay, they don't have chairs, they don't have tables, you take pictures, you write about them, and then like a few weeks later they
So
say,
just
all
to
right.
go around that, what you just mentioned right now, it takes me to the next question, which is now, okay, what is that you talked about when you go around sometimes these are the three things that is needed. So for student learning and performance, what is that, what is in quotes quality education in your own definition, with everything that you've learned, with everything that you've seen, you've investigated on schools and things like that? What are those concrete things that schools really need, that they should have in place for students to really learn and reach their potentials? Even if it's here or abroad or whatever it is, what's that? Do you have list of things or ideas? In the number of years you've been working as a education journalist. Yeah.
Okay, I think one of the issues that we have, basically in
Mhm.
Nigeria, right, is that let me say, we don't we understand that, okay, education is like the key to success, right? But I feel like
Yes.
still don't see education as that key, right? We believe it is success, but we don't see it as that key. And I feel that is one of the reasons why successive governments over the years, and even random individuals, still see that, oh, is it not just education and all of that? So when it comes to quality education, yes, people talk about infrastructure, right? I mean, okay, you have a very good building, you have chairs, you have tables, and all of that. But for me, when someone asks me, okay, what does it take to actually, give out quality education? I think the first thing that I talk about is, the quality of your teachers. right? I wrote an article a few weeks ago, and then somebody asked me and said, okay, we're actually discussing about the UTME, and then the person was like, what do you think is actually responsible for the failure? And then I mentioned quite a number of other things, and then I gave a quote, and I said, you see, no unhappy teacher can actually give birth to a successful student. And why did I say that? In Nigeria now, when you see the state of the sector, the sector is in a degraded arena actually. But then when you now see the quality of the teachers, it's below par. I mean, you have teachers are like
You're very correct.
one of the most poorly paid. Yeah. I mean, even when you go through the federal government scale, the salary scale, you go through the MDAs, and then you now go through the salary scale for the teachers. I mean, until recently, was it not in 2023 that okay, President Muhammadu Buhari actually like approved for the increment in their salaries, especially for those working in schools owned by the Ministry of Defense, right? Some of these teachers have to work for like 35 years before they can actually earn 150,000 naira. I'm saying this because I have family members, I have friends, I know people who work as teachers in federal school. Now, if that is the case in federal school, you have to now go to the state schools. You have to go to some subpar, below the par private schools, actually. So when you don't have teachers who are happy, now that is even apart from teachers who are not qualified. Okay, the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria recently gave out a data, and they said we have about 70% of teachers in private schools in the southwest are not qualified. And then when you even look at it, most of the people in Nigeria that actually venture into teaching are not properly trained educationists. Most people just feel like, okay, I graduated, like, let me say in 2017. I didn't get a job. Okay, I wanted to work in a bank, so I didn't get a job. And then somebody just call you, for me, they will come and teach. Just say, oh, let me use it to
Let me
pass.
just say, actually, you're correct. When I finished university and I was waiting for NYSC, I had to teach in a school for like 6 months before I went for NYSC. So I was earning like 18,000 on 20,000. Now it's like 2014 or something. I was earning like 20,000 every month, and I just finished, and I didn't have NC and all those things. So yeah,
Well, I thought for a while too, right? I thought for a while too, so I get what you're saying. So when you have that kind of situation, and then when you look at the UTME, okay, like you have a minimum benchmark for admissions. You have for university, okay, the benchmark for admission is like 160, polytechnics and colleges of education 100. Now, these are the people who go to colleges of education are the people who are meant to train the future leaders. And then you're telling them that, okay, out of an exam, 400, and then they are, let me say, okay, you just have to score 100 marks for you to actually gain admission into a college of education. So you get, wow, will that kind of teacher in quote actually give you quality education when even that teacher doesn't know what he's doing? Then another thing that people fail to actually like, I think that Nigeria has not gotten right is the issue of curriculum, right? I mean, when you look at the curriculum, I think recently, the National Universities Commission, okay, actually had to say, okay, you know what? Because the world is changing, right? Things are changing. For instance, now you mentioned something earlier that now you have Gen Zs interested in tech. It's rare to see a Gen Z that is interested in another thing, right? The world is moving, the world is evolving. So, and then we have talks of entrepreneurship. Most people are into entrepreneurship and quite a number of other things. But then when you look at the curriculum, these things are not entrenched there. For instance, when it comes to tech now, before in Nigerian universities, what you just see is BSc computer science or BTech computer science. I was speaking to a friend of mine recently and I was like, gosh, I wish I actually learned coding in school. The person was like, my school, nobody taught us coding. He said the lecturer would just say, why you do this, why you do that, that's coding. And then you just get your BSc computer science. Nobody delves into machine learning, nobody delves into AI and all of that. So, the National Universities Commission was like, okay, this is what is happening. We need to like reinvent the curriculum, right? But when you now go lower, when you go to the secondary schools, when you go to the primary schools, except for some high-end private schools, and they're like how many percent? I mean, maybe let's just say less than 10%. And that is me being generous. Those are probably the ones that probably have, okay, this reinvented curriculum. But for other young people, there is nothing like that. So the issue of curriculum actually matters. And then, yes, small class sizes. Well, I haven't really experienced this large class size of a thing, but at least in the course of my waka waka up and down schools and everything,
Yeah,
you go to some schools, even in Abuja. People used to say, okay, Abuja is the seat of power, so you should have some high end and all. And then when you actually go to some schools, I mean, you actually see like 120, 60, 100. Before, whenever people talk about these numbers, I used to think that, oh, exaggeration. I mean, even in my primary, then we're like 30. And then, like, sometimes, the teachers still struggle to, like, okay, attend to 30 students. So now when you have 100 students, you're having 120, even 60, and all of that. So when you have quite a huge number of students, I mean, there is no way these students can actually get access to that
yeah,
education. Because obviously,
exactly.
when you get to these classes, I mean, I don't think you will see a teacher with a microphone. The teacher will probably sit in front of the class, so only like, let me say, first two, three lines, and a few serious ones. And obviously, majority of the students in those classes will not be serious. So most of them
Yeah,
will
yeah.
listening, we'll be playing, and all of that. So another thing I think is access to resources, technology, right? Like I always say, I mean, it's more like in Nigeria we hate education. I don't know. That's just the way I feel. When you look at, I mean, the way attention to us, the way we actually like
Mm,
talk to us, the way we focus on other sectors, we really don't
mm,
give that attention. Because now, I am very, very sure that there are some states that you go to. I mean, you actually move around the schools there, except, like I said, except for some high-end private schools. You will have some students who haven't even, operated a computer in their whole life. Hear me, and then because I belong to a group on Facebook. Sorry, I, I like to just move around, take surveys and all of that. So there's this group on Facebook, I think, concerned educators, right? So I joined that group on Facebook, and then people were talking about, oh, what actually caused this mass failure, even though I wouldn't say it's mass failure. Okay, and then a teacher said, what do you expect? Some of these students that actually sat the UTME have never operated a computer in their life. So it's like probably like the first time for some of them. So some of them probably got to the computer system and then said, hey, what is this? And then they start to fidget. They are scared, they are afraid that, oh, I've never operated this in my life and all of that. So, I feel like it's actually absurd. It's actually weird. I
mm,
mean, we are in we like this is 2024. I mean, everybody, most people that I know actually have computers in their houses. People have laptops, people have iPads, people have tablets and all of that. So what is stopping our lawmakers? What is stopping the government? What is stopping schools from
yeah,
actually allowing students gain access to resources and technology? And it's
mm,
some are just, I don't know. Honestly, it's just, that's why I said it's more like there is this in-depth hatred for education. It's more like
so-
next generation. It's more like we don't want them to be at the same level with their counterparts all over the world. Yeah,
And it's actually quite sad because when you look at the videos from like the 1970s, where the British came to teach, our grandparents, and you could see them speaking the phone, and when they're done, they travel abroad immediately. And this is, and you see what maybe even in the West, what Obafemi Awolowo did back then. Like the people in the West, they had that education, the classrooms, and it's really sad that these same people that are in government right now can pour that same thing that was poured into them long time ago into this new generation, and
You know, it's
it's
funny how she
actually
said
quite,
that it seems
it's
that there's
really really
hate
really
against
really
education.
ridiculous.
You know,
I can't
and
even
I
think
think
about it.
data always shows that where you spend your money shows where your heart is. And in our budget for this
Yeah,
2024 fiscal year, it shows that it's only education represents only
exactly.
6.3% of the total budget. And UNESCO's recommendation is minimum of 15%. So it says a lot about what
Wow.
they call our love or our hate for education because the numbers say it. That means other things are more important than training our children. Well, yes, so I completely aligned with what you're saying, Deborah. Yeah, sure. Okay. I wanted to talk
Quick, quick.
about this whole thing about out of school children. I
Do you
think
want
is
to
a
ask the next
major
question?
issue. and I do remember Minister of State for Education, Dr. Yusuf Sununu, and he mentioned at an event, he talked about the northern children, or as a time bomb that needs to be addressed. So I know there's a reported UNESCO report saying that states that 20 million Nigerian children are out of school. But we want to get, what do you think is causing this, and what do you think are the effects on Nigeria's future? That's one major issue we want to talk about.
Okay, so concerning the issue of this out of school, okay. Okay, now recently there was even a controversy, right, around the data. Okay, UNESCO said, okay, we have 20 million out of school, and then the federal government is saying, no, you're lying. We have less than 10 million. So I'll say, let's even start from the root of the problem. One of the major concerns, one of my major concerns, is the fact that we don't even have adequate data, right? We don't even have the exact number of this children, right? So now, when you don't even have an idea of the number of people that you want to cater for, right? You don't have an idea of the number of affected children that you want to bring into the classroom. Now, how do you want to solve the problem? Okay, so now one of the solutions, right, is that you really, really have to conduct a census. Basically, what the Universal Basic Education Commission normally does is that, okay, they do what we call this education sector census, right? Where they go around, they deploy individuals who move around, go to where some of these children are, actually, count them and, ask their parents the reason why they are not in school. Now, the first step is actually getting the right data. Now, when you look at it, recently I traveled to Kano State. Okay, UNICEF actually invited me and a couple of other journalists. So we went to Kano State, and it was basically because of this issue of out of school. One of the factors that is majorly contributing to the increase is will I say religion, or I think tribal sentiments. Like, let me say, in the north and the south, it's more like two different sets of individuals. We actually view life in different ways. Yeah, they really, really respect Islamic education. They really, really embrace Islamic education. So now, when I moved around the streets of Kano, one of the things I discovered was this. Some of them, their parents actually believe that, you know what, you have to go to madrasa, that is Islamic school, before you can actually be enrolled for Western education. Now, UNICEF suggested something for the federal government. Now, since you know that this is what you're dealing with, you have a group of people who actually who have actually embraced their religion, and they're actually okay, willing to go to any length for their religion. Now, this is what they are saying. Let them go to madrasa, okay? And then you can now design a kind of system in which, while they are actually enrolled in their Islamic schools, you actually get teachers from the Western side to actually teach them. So it's going to be like a mixed school. While they are learning Islamic education, they're actually getting Western education. We are still there. The federal government hasn't really designed the plan. Now, there are lots of problems that can actually stem up. Okay, now we are battling with insecurity. Now, it might interest you to know that I think, was it okay, yes, in 2022, I went to Enugu, right? And then UNICEF also presented some data. And then you'll be shocked that
As
Imo
in, you
State
took the wow out
actually
of my
has one of
mouth.
the
Wow.
highest number of out of school children in Nigeria. Like Imo State. I wish I actually share it. You'll be thinking that this is like the southern part of Nigeria where people actually see education as a thing. And in the southwest, like Oyo State actually has one of the highest number of out of school children. That is Oyo State that is housing the great Unibank. Now,
Wow.
the World Bank actually introduced a project. We call it BESDA, Better Education. Okay, so what the World Bank does is that the World Bank actually releases funds to some of the states that, okay, this is your problem, this is your part of school children. Now, we're going to be giving you funds. Now, out of this funds, the school fees of these children, their books, even their feeding has been taken care of, right? And again, another issue is about this. There's something we called UBEC fund. We call it Universal Basic Education Intervention Fund. Now, this intervention fund is like a kind of bailout from the federal government. where the federal government actually releases money for basic education. Now, money from this fund is actually also meant to take care of this issue of out of school children. But the unfortunate part is that because state governors, before they can actually access this fund, they have to lodge a certain percentage of money with UBEC. So once they launch this percentage of money, the federal government release it's like saying, okay, I want to give Okpebiko 1 million naira. But before she can access that 1 million naira, she has to give me 500,000 for me to keep with her. So when she gives me 500,000, I will double it and give her 1 million. So then you have quite a number of states that are not even doing this. And that is meant to be like an intervention fund, a bailout fund for basic education. But unfortunately, this is not happening. We have state government. Ogun State is even worse. I think Ogun State is owing as far back as 2018.
Wow.
It's terrible. And then you have some other states. You have I don't like going through from this state.
I have two questions out of what you just talked about now. One was, the bailout funds that can actually help and things like that. Maybe that would affect, nutrition and food and stuff like that. And the other one is it seems you've really gone around a lot to all of these cities and states, and we'll come to your report in that sense. This is like 2 in 1 questions. So the first question is, so we all know a hungry belly makes it, really, really hard to focus. So do you think like with the rising, cost of like food stuff and things like that, how can we find a balance between good nutrition and getting the education they deserve, and then the kids getting the education they deserve? That's one. And then the second question is about, the school reports. And we heard about the Abuja school reports that has really made rounds and things like that. So we also want to hear, some of these things. What's the connection between like those school facilities and student success? So can you, bring those together? So first is like the nutrition and education, and then the other one's like the Abuja report that you did. So yeah.
Okay, so now when it comes to this issue of nutrition, obviously, I mean, you need to find a good balance between good nutrition and education. Like, I remember then when I was still like in primary school, right? My mom normally tells us something that you guys should always have breakfast before 8 o'clock because it actually helps in the development of the brain. And then she actually normally gives lot of tips about the food to eat that actually aids in brain development. Obviously, we have some genius
Wow.
probably may not need some of these things. I mean, you have some whiz that they can even be eating gari every now and then. One thing is sure, I mean, without food, I mean, we know, an adult now can move on and say, you know what, let me just turn it into fasting, can be all of that. But for children, it's actually different. Now, initially we had this school feeding program in Nigeria, right? Before the whole thing was I don't know how to put it. It's still
Before it turned to political just for pictures and videos. Yeah. So
and so let's just say okay, it's still under investigation. But there was a time that we actually moved around and we spoke to some of the students, and then some teachers actually told us that some of these students actually come to school because they know that they're actually going to get food. Even though some when you look at the quality of the food, like they'll just be like white rice. White rice will be like what I don't know. Like when it's like I don't know, it's like fufu that is like white rice. I've never seen that kind of thing in my life. Like and small stew.
the how to
I call it rice actually. I call it fufu rice because it's actually not that nice. So, but the teachers actually tell us that some of these students actually come to school because of the food, and then the teachers actually tell them that sometimes when they're not listening, they will tell them that we'll tell them not to give you food, and then you start seeing them please, oh, please, oh, because some of them are actually from poor homes, and then by the time they get home, they might probably
that's a very good catchy way to keep them focused.
I feel like one way that the government can actually help because obviously, I mean, this inflation, everybody's going through it. I mean, I was having a conversation with my mom today, like, I wanted to pay for something, and in this thing used to be like, was like 17,000, and today I had to pay 20,500 naira for it. And I was telling my mom that I actually wonder how people are actually coping and all of that. So now, for people who actually had to depend on, the school feeding program before, now with the rising inflation, you can imagine how difficult it's going to be. So I don't know. I would actually recommend that the federal government actually hasten this issue of investigation because I feel like
We can't hear you.
Okay,
Yeah, continue. We can hear you now.
so I wish that the federal government can actually reintroduce the school food because it's actually going to help. You can actually, like, let me say, support teachers, support the parents.
Hear you, Corey.
Then another thing is, food. I feel like I salute the private sector, right? Sector, but I still feel like can actually do for the education sector. In line with what you said, I feel like, setting up food banks, pantries, some of these non-governmental organizations, actually, giving out, food assistance schemes and all of that. Then another thing is I feel like in Nigeria, we actually have the solutions to our problem. But we actually I don't know. I think we have a problem, right? Okay, now we're talking about
I think it's greed, greediness.
you of that. And I still feel like now we're talking about like affecting prices. I mean, I feel like it's time for us to actually bring agriculture. I think we have to start growing our own food. I mean, my mom, when you house, my mom, right? I mean, she has orange trees, has bunch of things to actually, cushion everything. So you rarely see her going to the market and all of that. But that's just by the wayside. But for me, I think it's actually time for the government, not just the federal government this time around. I think state governments now can actually key in into this idea of the school feeding program. I mean, instead of actually wasting money to say, okay, we bought textbooks, we bought exercise books, we bought unnecessary things. I mean, a governor recently, highlighted some of his achievements in the education sector and was like, I purchased jam form for 100 students. And I'm like, what is this into your law? You understand all those kind of things. So, there are other worthy projects. I feel like this school feeding program, right? If the state governors can actually key into this, let them set, you know what? Lagos state government did something recently. They set up food banks, right? When people can actually purchase food at subsidized rates. So I feel like state governors can actually borrow from initiatives like this. We don't have to wait for the federal government to actually like intervene. Obviously, it's going to be laden with corruption because we're in Nigeria. Some people will still see it as an avenue to steal, right? But I feel like if something like this can actually be, incorporated, it will really help. You will really see more students turning up. You really see them, catching up and all of that. And well, it doesn't have to be a balanced diet. Of course, it can't be a balanced diet. We are in Nigeria. I'm a patriotic Nigeria, but that's not the truth. I mean, but
Yeah.
at least state governors should actually set up food banks. And if they cannot, they should key into this scheme of school feeding program. I feel it's going to help. And then on the second question, please, sorry me, I think that's it. If you can just remind me, the second question.
Okay, so the second question, I want to talk about your Abuja school report that made rounds. So what's the connection between school facilities and then student success?
Omo, there are a lot of there are a lot of connections. There are a lot of connections. Like when I got that school, okay, someone just texted and said, Deborah, do you know there's a school in this Abuja when they don't even have classrooms? Like the first thing I came to my mind was like, then how is it a school? Like I don't understand. The school does not have classroom and you are still calling it a school. It's not a school now. It's probably a lesson center or something. Even like, when I had that, I said, okay, I think I have to find out. So I went there and I was shocked because it wasn't just about not having classrooms. I mean, they were basically in the middle of nowhere. And to be the most interesting part of it is that it is a registered government school. So now, how did that kind of school even get accreditation? Because like I know what the government put private schools through. I mean, before you can actually get accreditation for private schools, I mean, you have to show them, okay, this, and then you actually have supervisors that go around, quarterly and all of that to check this. Even though, yes, some private schools can still, bribe and all of that. But I'm like, how did this kind of school even get accreditation and all of that? So now, in that school, the funny thing is that they actually learn under a shed, right? You have refuge dump. In fact, when I even went there, I saw some of these herdsmen. They were actually with their cattle. And like you can understand. So now what I noticed that some of those students now they don't even have chairs, right? They have mats. The teachers actually lay mats on the ground, and then the children actually like sit down. Now, the funny thing is that these are not even secondary school students. Like, these are primary school students. They are very, very young. And for secondary school students, it is still easy to get their attention. But for younger students, for younger pupils rather, it's very difficult to actually get their attention. Now, the teacher is in front of the class. The teacher is teaching, and then again, the students, you can see cartoons moving around. The attention lost again. And then at some point, the stench from the refuse dump will just, in fact, as an adult, I could not even withstand it. Now, like, so I like thinking about those children. In fact, I'm like, how is their breathing? Like, I think they should even go, because I can't, for me, I felt like if I should stay there for like an extra hour, something else might actually happen. Now, so what am I trying to say? When it comes to infrastructure actually, school facilities actually play a very, very, very huge role when it comes to education. For instance, now you go to school, you don't have a chair to sit. You are probably like sitting down on the floor, or probably in the class. The teacher doesn't even have well, I wanted to say whiteboard, interactive whiteboard, but I see this is like a fast stretch in Nigeria. Now, we're talking about blackboard. Now, there is no board, right? You enter a classroom like that, there is no board, and then the teacher probably just takes a notebook and said, now, there is one thing now, this kind of pupils that are brought up in that kind of environment, sorry, do you think they can even like understand how to read, talk less of even knowing how to write? There is no blackboard. The teacher probably goes around with one textbook. Now, maybe there is a question now that can even tell you that for that kind of facility, the quality of the teachers there will be it will be something else. So it actually plays a huge role, because some of these things actually help to shaping a child. When I tell people that when you go to school, it's not just about what you're learning academic wise, right? You're learning structure, right? You're learning quite a number of things. I mean, I used to tell people that I pay attention very well. And like you can actually say something like you can say something like, let me see, you can tell me something like 2 weeks ago. And then you ask me later, and then I'm like, okay, this is what you said and all of that. Like this is having a retentive memory. It's actually something that you can actually learn in school, right? And it depends on the environment that you are situated in, right? For you to actually have good quality education,
You're correct.
role. Like you really need to like feel that you are in school. But when you are in school and then you are feeling like you are in the market, there's nothing you want to learn, because the distractions are there. And then the funny thing is that you have people living around. Maybe you are even teaching the children, oh, A for apple, B for ball, and you're probably hearing somebody shouting, "This is who took my car? Who took my kettle? Hey, that did this, something that did that," and all of that, and then everywhere. And it's so funny, sometimes it can be raining, sometimes it is sunny, and then the children are still under the shed. So it really doesn't feel like school. It doesn't really add any benefit to learning. The teachers are even uncomfortable. So now, when a teacher is even in an arena that they don't feel comfortable, trust me, there is no knowledge that that teacher wants to pass across.
Wow.
I feel like really some of this. I feel like we need to talk about structure. We really need to talk about some and that's why I keep saying that there is a special hatred in the heart of Nigerians for education. We pursue education, but when it comes to the sector itself, it's more like we hate that sector. Like we don't. It's I don't know, but when you can't go to a hospital. I mean, I know that yes, doctors are always complaining that this and that, but I think I've never seen a hospital that doesn't have a building. I've never seen a hospital that doesn't have a bed. I mean, at least they will have two beds, right? A bed, even if it's a single bed. But then you actually go to some schools that students don't even have chairs. Like I have two schools in Abuja that I've done stories on, where the students don't even have chairs to sit on and all of that. So it's actually sad. It's actually frustrating and not encouraging at all for a country that actually wants to breed future leaders.
Well, I think I'm even weak. I don't even know how to ask my next question.
To be honest, to be honest, it's a really really sad case, and
Yeah, it is. It is. And I understand how important for children to have the right environment to learn. And so let me even go straight, Deborah. Let's ask. A lot of people say it's easy to talk from the outside when you're not in government. It's easy to come up with lofty ideas that will make Nigeria the best thing since sliced bread. But if given the opportunity, now presenting to you now, Deborah, if you're given the opportunity to be a commissioner of education or the minister of education, commissioner in a state you prefer, or the Minister of Education in Nigeria, what will you do differently that has not been done, or what would you improve upon that is currently being implemented?